You ever notice how a narcissist can dish it out, but they can't take it? They can criticize, manipulate, gaslight, control, but the moment you speak a little truth, just a little raw honesty, they crumble inside. That's because underneath all that bravado, all that grandstanding and fake confidence is a person terrified of being seen for who they really are. That fear is their weakness. And when you understand that, really get it, you're no longer powerless. You're holding the remote to the show they've been directing for way too long. See, narcissists survive on illusions. Illusions of power, perfection, control, and superiority. Their entire sense of self-worth is built on how you see them, how others see them, never on who they actually are. So if you want to make them feel the pain they put you through, it starts by stripping away that illusion. Not by fighting, not by screaming, not by matching their chaos, but by seeing through it. When you really understand what makes them tick, they stop being this overwhelming, intimidating force. They shrink. And they hate that. You see, the truth is like acid in a narcissist's ego. It burns. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It just has to be real. That's why when you calmly say, I know what you're doing, or that doesn't work on me anymore, they start unraveling. You're holding a mirror up to them, and trust me, they hate mirrors, unless they're the one choosing what gets reflected. The more self-aware you become, the more dangerous you are to them, because now you're not reacting. You're not falling for the manipulation. You're not playing your role in their carefully crafted drama. What people don't realize is that narcissists are some of the most insecure people walking the planet. All that arrogance, that's not strength. That's a defense mechanism. That's armor made of paper. So when you stand tall in truth, when you choose calm over chaos, when you choose to heal instead of retaliate, you're doing something they don't know how to handle. You're showing them that their games don't work on everyone. And more importantly, you're showing yourself that you don't have to keep shrinking to fit into someone else's twisted reality. Now, does that mean you walk around pointing fingers and calling them out all day long? No. That's not power, that's reaction. And reaction is what they feed on. What you do instead is you recognize the game and you refuse to play it. You don't argue to win. You don't try to prove yourself. You already know the truth, and when you live from that place, it becomes unbearable for them. Because now you're not trapped in their maze. You've stepped outside of it. And when they can't control you, they start to spiral. They want your energy. They want your attention. They want your fear, your frustration, your desperation, because it feeds them. But when you understand what's really happening, you take your power back. And that's where the shift happens. That's where they start to feel it. That quiet, slow-burning pain of irrelevance. The realization that you've outgrown their influence. You've broken the spell. And let me be real with you, you don't even have to say a word sometimes. Just living in your truth, just smiling without them, healing without permission, refusing to chase or explain, that is pain to a narcissist. Because now they're watching you do what they can't. They're watching you become whole without destroying someone else in the process. And deep down, they know they'll never have that peace. That's the real sting. That's what makes them feel what they put you through, not because you made them hurt, but because you stopped letting them keep you in pain. So the next time you're wondering how to get even, remember clarity is revenge. Self-respect is revenge. Refusing to be fooled, refusing to be controlled, refusing to give them the reaction they're desperate for, that's how you turn the tables. You don't need to destroy them. You just need to stop being the fuel that keeps their fire burning. Let the truth starve them. Now, let's talk about something that's going to feel unnatural at first, but it's one of the most powerful things you can ever do when dealing with a narcissist. Stop playing their game. That's it. I mean, completely disengage. You see, narcissists don't just want your attention, they need it. They feed off it. Positive, negative, it doesn't matter. As long as you're reacting, you're fueling them. You think arguing back, trying to get them to understand your side, explaining yourself over and over is helping. It's not. You're handing them your power on a silver platter. They want you confused. They want you emotional, because the more tangled up you are in their web, the easier it is for them to pull the strings. But the moment you stop responding the way they expect, the moment you switch from emotional to calm, from invested to detached, that's when you begin to shift the dynamic. That's when you start starving the very thing they survive on: control. One of the most effective ways to do this is by going no contact. And I know for some of you, that sounds extreme. Maybe you share kids with them. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe you work together. In those cases, you use something called the gray rock method. That means you make yourself emotionally unavailable, dull, uninteresting, no expression, no deep conversations, no defending yourself, just facts, short answers, no drama. Because narcissists aren't looking for peace, they're looking for chaos. They're looking for someone to pull into a storm so they can feel powerful, so they can feel in control. And when you stop showing up to the storm, When you stop dancing in their emotional drama, you take that control away. And let me tell you something, nothing hurts a narcissist more than being ignored. You think yelling hurts them? No. You think name-calling shakes them? Nope. Silence? Indifference. Boundaries. That's what rattles them to the core. Now they'll try to suck you back in. They'll test you. They might love bomb you, act like they've changed, shower you with attention, say all the right things just to see if they still have access to your heart, your mind, your emotions. Or they'll go the opposite route, start a smear campaign, try to turn people against you, try to make you feel guilty. Why? Because they hate losing control. They hate when the puppet starts cutting strings. But listen, you don't owe them your energy. You don't owe them an explanation for your peace. The same person who made you question your worth doesn't get to question your healing. When you stop responding, when you stop explaining, when you stop engaging, you're not being cold. You're being clear, you're protecting your peace. And every time you choose that over chaos, you make it harder for them to manipulate you. This isn't easy, especially if you've been conditioned to react. If you've spent years defending yourself, trying to be understood, trying to get validation from someone who was never going to give it to you. But here's the truth, you don't need closure from a narcissist. You don't need understanding. What you need is distance. And when you give yourself that distance emotionally, mentally, physically, that's when the fog begins to lift. That's when you start to think clearly again. That's when you begin to see just how deep their influence ran and just how much freer you are without it. And don't be surprised if they escalate. When you go silent, when you go gray rock, they might come harder at first. They're panicking. They feel the shift. But that's not your cue to re-engage. It's your sign that what you're doing is working. Because silence isn't weakness. It's strength. Silence says, I no longer need to convince you of anything. Silence says, I know my worth and I don't have to prove it to you. That kind of clarity, that kind of confidence. That's what breaks their grip. Every time you choose not to respond, not to explain, not to chase your healing, you're reminding yourself that your peace is worth more than their attention, that your energy is sacred, that you are no longer available for manipulation, mind games, or emotional abuse. You're saying without a word, I've outgrown this. And that kind of silence, that kind of stillness, that's what shakes them the most. Let me tell you something real clear. Nothing makes a narcissist feel the pain they put you through more than watching you become the version of yourself they tried to destroy. Nothing. You want to flip the script. You want to return the energy without even lying, without even lifting a finger toward revenge. Heal. Heal out. Heal in silence. Heal any way you need to, but heal. Because when you do, you take back what they were banking on you never getting again, your power. See, the pain they caused wasn't just about the moment. They wanted it to live inside you. They wanted it to linger. The way they made you doubt yourself, question your worth, shrink your voice, that was intentional. Narcissists don't hurt you on accident. They do it to weaken your sense of self so you'll become easier to control, easier to keep, easier to break. They don't want you healed. They want you hooked on needing their approval, hooked on proving your value, hooked on chasing closure that was never coming. But here's the part they never saw coming. The moment you choose healing, the moment you say, I refuse to stay in this pain just because they put me here, you break the entire foundation they stood on. Because they don't know what to do with someone they can't break. They don't know what to do with someone who gets stronger after the storm instead of weaker. They don't know what to do with someone who finally realizes I never needed their validation to begin with. Healing, real healing, doesn't look like pretending it never happened. It doesn't look like toxic positivity. It doesn't mean you forget the damage or act like you're fine when you're not. Healing looks like acknowledging the hurt, facing the trauma, doing the ugly, messy work in private. It's the journaling, the therapy, the crying in your car when a song hits just right. It's the boundaries, it's saying no without guilt, it's letting go of needing to be understood by someone who was never listening in the first place. That's healing. And it's not linear, it's not perfect, but it's yours. That makes it powerful. The irony is the stronger you become, the more they feel it. Not because you're trying to hurt them, but because you're doing something they can't. They don't heal. They deflect. They blame. They mask their wounds with ego and fake confidence. So when they see you doing the work they're terrified to even acknowledge, it burns. When they see you smiling again, not for them, not to make them jealous, but for you, it bruises their fragile little ego more than any words ever could. They expected you to stay stuck. They expected you to fall apart and never get back up. They expected the version of you they broke to be the only version of you that ever existed. But every day you keep growing, every step you take toward the life they tried to convince you you'd never have without them, that's a message loud and clear. You lost access to me when you stopped respecting me. And here's the truth, healing isn't just about you. It becomes a message, a legacy. You start walking different, talking different, setting standards higher. You stop tolerating the bare minimum from people. You stop begging to be chosen. And when that shift happens, you don't even have to say a word. People feel it. The narcissist feels it. They see you rising and realize they're no longer part of the equation. That spotlight they needed, you turned it off. That stage they kept pulling you onto, you walked away. Let that sink in. You didn't need revenge. You needed recovery. You didn't need to play their game. You needed to step out of it entirely and build your own world. And while they're still out there chasing attention, trying to manipulate their way into somebody else's story, you're building peace. You're creating joy. You're choosing you. So don't let them trick you into thinking healing is weakness. Healing is the strongest thing you will ever do. It's a revolution. And if you ever wonder if it's working, if they feel it, just look at how loud their silence gets when you stop entertaining their chaos. Look at how uncomfortable they get when you don't flinch anymore. That's when you'll know they feel it. You ever notice how a narcissist will go to great lengths to protect their image, even if it means lying through their teeth, rewriting history, or dragging your name through the mud? That's because they care more about how people see them than who they actually are. They live for the mask. That reputation, that admiration, that sense of superiority, it's everything to them. So, if you really want to make a narcissist feel the pain they put you through, you don't have to scream, expose every detail, or turn it into a war. You just start letting truth stand on its own. Quietly, strategically. Because nothing is more threatening to a narcissist than the truth being seen without you saying a word too loud. They don't fear confrontation, they fear exposure. They fear being seen as ordinary, flawed, manipulative, weak. And guess what? They're all of that. But they've spent their whole life becoming masters at hiding it behind charm, charisma, accomplishments, or fake humility. They know how to wear the perfect mask in public. They know what to say to win people over. But when you stop covering for them, when you stop protecting their reputation at the cost of your own peace, when you stop biting your tongue every time they twist the story, that's when things start to shift. Because the truth doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be consistent. You don't have to be messy, petty, or dramatic. In fact, the more grounded you are, the more threatening it becomes to their illusion. You set boundaries. You tell your story when necessary. You speak facts, not feelings, in rooms where it matters. You don't engage in their smear campaigns. You just let people watch the truth reveal itself in your actions, your peace, your growth, and how you carry yourself. Now, don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean you walk around trying to ruin their lives. That's not your job. That's not your assignment. You don't need to go after them to get justice. All you have to do is stop participating in their cover-up. That's what hits the hardest. Narcissists are used to people enabling them, cleaning up their messes, keeping quiet to keep the peace, and sacrificing their own truth to avoid conflict. But when you stop playing that role, when you start choosing honesty, clarity, and boundaries over silence, they feel it deep. They might accuse you of being bitter. They might call you fake, dramatic, crazy, or ungrateful. They'll project everything they are onto you because they're terrified someone might finally start connecting the dots. Let them talk. Let them throw whatever they need to throw, because if you stay steady in truth, you don't have to defend yourself. The people who matter will start to see, and the narcissists, they'll start to squirm, because the more they talk, the more obvious the contradictions become. The more desperate they get, the more the mask starts to slip. And all you had to do was stop lying for them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just speak clearly when it counts, and let your silence speak the rest. Because the truth always finds light, and narcissists can only thrive in the shadows. Once those shadows get smaller, once the room gets brighter, they panic. That's why they get so triggered when you move on, when you tell your story, when you live your life in peace. It exposes their behavior by contrast. You don't even have to say, look what they did. People will start to figure it out on their own when your words are calm, your story stays consistent, and your energy doesn't match the chaos they expected. This is about playing the long game. You don't need a courtroom to make your case. You don't need to convince everybody. You just need to stay rooted in reality and refuse to back down from what's true, no matter how much they try to distort it. You're not seeking revenge. You're allowing the consequences of their own actions to meet them without you intercepting it. That's the beauty of strategic exposure. You're not dragging them down. You're just refusing to hold them up anymore. And when you do that, when you calmly live your truth, when you let the facts speak louder than their fiction, they feel it. Oh, they feel it. Because the image they built is starting to crack. And there's nothing more painful to a narcissist than the world seeing through the mask they worked so hard to protect. That's when the silence becomes deafening. Let me break something down for you that's going to shift the way you see this entire experience. The greatest revenge isn't making them cry, or chasing them down with proof of what they did, or hoping they'll feel just as broken as you did. No, the greatest revenge is living so well that their memory becomes irrelevant. You stop talking about them, stop thinking about what they think, Stop caring whether they know you're doing better because your life becomes so full, so rich, so peaceful that their name doesn't even echo anymore. That's how you win. Narcissists love attention, even if it's negative. They love knowing you're still wrapped up in their drama, that you're still haunted by what they did, that even in your healing, they're at the center of it. That's what they want. They want to know they left a mark. But when you start building a life so rooted in peace, purpose, joy, and self-respect that it's not even about them anymore, that's when they really feel it. That's when they realize their biggest fear came true, you moved on, and they no longer matter. And don't get confused, this isn't about pretending you're fine just to make a point. This is about doing the real work to become fine for you. Because let me tell you, freedom doesn't come from proving you're happy. It comes from actually being happy. It comes from waking up without anxiety in your chest, without replaying old conversations in your head, without wondering why they did what they did. It comes from building new routines, new friendships, new memories, without carrying the weight of the past into every room you enter. When you start investing in yourself, your growth, your healing, your dreams, that energy becomes magnetic. Your confidence starts returning. Your joy becomes visible. People see it in your eyes. They hear it in your laugh. You're not faking it. You're not forcing it. You're finally free. And that freedom isn't performative, it's authentic. That's what gets to a narcissist. Because deep down, they know they never gave you that freedom. They tried to control it, limit it, destroy it. But you found a way to rise without them. And that rise, that's what breaks them. You see, narcissists don't believe people can truly thrive without them. Their whole identity is wrapped up in being irreplaceable, in being the center of your world. So when you stop orbiting around them and become your own source of light, they start to feel the weight of their own emptiness. And here's the kicker, they'll often come back just to see if the door's still cracked open. Maybe it's a message out of nowhere, a comment on your post, a mutual friend reaching out with some odd story. That's not love, that's control. That's curiosity mixed with ego. They want to know if they still have access. But the moment you stop entertaining that energy, that's when they really lose. When you no longer need closure. When you no longer react. When you're too focused on building your own legacy to entertain old toxicity. That's the moment they feel everything they tried to avoid feeling: rejection, irrelevance, emptiness. Not because you tried to hurt them, but because you stopped letting them hurt you. Now, let's be real. This doesn't happen overnight. There are days where you'll still feel triggered. Days where the memories hit harder than expected. That's okay. That's part of the process. Healing isn't about pretending you were never hurt. It's about deciding that your pain doesn't get to be your identity anymore. It's about recognizing what happened, learning from it, and refusing to live in that same emotional space. You deserve a life where you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next manipulation, the next disappointment, the next emotional ambush. You deserve a life where peace isn't a luxury, it's your baseline. And when you start walking in that kind of energy, trust me, you don't have to announce your healing. It speaks for itself. Your boundaries speak. Your energy speaks. Your silence, your confidence, your refusal to explain or justify it all speaks. And what it says is clear: you're no longer available for dysfunction. So don't waste your time trying to make them feel what they did to you. Build something better. Build something beautiful. And let them sit with the fact that the best version of you is the one they'll never have access to again. Now let's talk about something that most people don't want to hear, but absolutely need to. True power doesn't come from getting even. It comes from letting go. I know that sounds backward when we're talking about someone who made it their mission to hurt you. Someone who manipulated, gaslighted, tore you down piece by piece, and made you feel like you were the problem while they played the victim. I get it. The natural urge is to make them feel exactly what they made you feel. To prove something. To show them you're not weak. That you're not the same person they left broken. But here's what I need you to understand: holding on to that desire, keeping score, plotting revenge, waiting for karma isn't healing. That's still pain. That's still bondage. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing their behavior. It doesn't mean saying what they did was okay. Letting go is saying, I choose me now. Not them. Not what they did. Not the version of me they damaged. Me, it's taking all the energy you've spent thinking about them, reliving the betrayal, analyzing every word they said, and redirecting it back into your own life. Into your growth. Into your peace. Because when you keep carrying the weight of what they did, even if you're no longer with them, they still own part of you. And that's what they want. Narcissists don't just feed off attention, they feed off attachment. Even after the relationship ends. They want you stuck in replay mode, stuck in bitterness, stuck in that version of yourself they created through chaos. But when you truly let go, when you release the need for validation, the need for closure, the need for them to acknowledge your pain, you cut the last string they were holding. That's when you finally become untouchable. You see, real peace doesn't scream. It doesn't prove. It doesn't chase. It doesn't even wait for justice. Real peace says, I am done letting your presence live in my mind rent-free. And that kind of peace, that kind of quiet confidence, that's what narcissists can't stand. Because they can't fight what they can't reach. They can't manipulate what they can't access. And when they realize they no longer have real estate in your mind, when they realize you no longer care how they spin the story, that you no longer flinch when their name is mentioned, that you're not checking their social media or waiting for karma to hit, that is when they start to feel it deeply. Now, I know some people will say, but doesn't that mean they get away with it? No. Letting go doesn't mean they get away with anything. It means you get away. You escape the cycle. You stop waiting for justice and start building joy. You stop being their emotional prisoner. And make no mistake, consequences always show up eventually for them and for you. But when you release the grip, when you focus inward, you no longer need to see it. Because you're no longer fueled by their downfall. You're fueled by your own rise. And that's where the shift happens. When you let go of the story they wrote for you, you become the author again. You get to redefine who you are outside of their narrative. You get to set standards based on love, not survival. You get to decide what kind of relationships you allow into your life. You get to heal, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And yeah, they'll feel it. They always do. When they realize they can't bait you anymore. When they notice you stopped reacting. When they hear about your progress from someone else because you're too focused on moving forward to look back. That silence, that detachment, that freedom, it'll echo louder than anything you could have said. And what's beautiful is you're not even doing it for them. You're doing it because you finally love yourself enough to stop holding hands with the past. So this is where you win, not by revenge, not by obsession, but by release. You win by living, by loving, by choosing peace over chaos, growth over pain, and truth over illusion. You win the moment you realize that letting go isn't giving up, it's getting up and walking away from everything that was never meant for you in the first place. That's when they feel it most, when you don't need them to feel it at all.